Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden, where today on the channel we're going to be looking at number one of my personal radical feminist heresies, which I mentioned in a video a couple of weeks ago. Heresy number one. I am trying to actually unpack some of the baggage we brought with us from the kitchen, rather than just pretending it doesn't exist. We want to trash it, but we can't, because the biological foundation the oppression of women was based on, sexual dimorphism, stubbornly persists. We are women, and we should be actively engaged in the understanding of what that means. Women's nature does exist. Throwing away every ideal we have regarding that is no more critically minded than unquestioning acceptance. As feminists, we work to identify with our female selves, then carry this notion that that shouldn't affect us in our thoughts or in our behavior. Which strikes me, again, as if we are trying to remove ourselves from the equation, as if we add nothing of value. To me, the differences between men and women are the foundations of our oppression, but nature didn't make it that way. Patriarchy did. Patriarchy is what convinced us these differences make us inferior, and that is what I refuse to accept. Those differences are what make us women, and I see the role of feminism as the process of us unpacking this and redefining these differences on our own terms, which you will often hear me refer to this as the baggage we brought with us from the kitchen, aka internalized misogyny. The Pick-Me girl seems to be the latest iteration of this. When I was younger, it was back before not like the other girls was even a meme, and you could get away with thinking stuff like this in isolation. These days, it's like it's out in the open. But we're still not actually working through our internalized misogyny because we don't want to admit we all had it. In this way, we are all not like the other girls. We are all potential pick-mes, just waiting for our unconscious self-hatred to find a target on another woman's back. And to help me illustrate my point just a little bit, I do have beloved fellow YouTuber Tara Mooney,
the only channel on YouTube where all videos are written and produced by a cow.
Because I am still incapable of finding stuff to watch that's not like related to whatever's on my mind, and I guess I don't really quite have the training wheels off on this whole video essay thing yet.
This term has, at this point, become ubiquitous, but its use has strayed far from the original meaning and its original intention, and, well, it's a mess. And someone needs to tidy it up. Women, get thee to the kitchen.
Obviously she's joking, but metaphorically speaking, I think it's time for some house cleaning, ladies. And I think that that's feminism's job.
The initial use of Pick-Me was an earnest attempt to deconstruct internalized misogyny, but it has spiraled out of control and become yet another way to police female behavior. There were/are women who actively put down other women, whether it's women as an amorphous demographic or targeting individual women. There are women who hurt women's causes and want to take away rights that other women benefit from or even survive off of. The label didn't come from nowhere. It's touching on a very real phenomenon and demonstrates how internalized misogyny plays an important role in sabotaging and stunting women's rights and progress.
Thank you, Tara. Very well put. This is only the most recent iteration of a cycle that has repeated at least twice just in my own lifetime.
Pick-Me puts down other women in pursuit of being picked by men, whether it's romantically or for general male validation. She might downplay women's struggles in order to score points with men. If she's in a relationship, she might be superior to other girlfriends by going above and beyond what is required of girlfriend duties, basically by waiting on him hand and foot and prioritizing his needs over her own. If a woman says or does these things, she might well be a pick-me, or at the very least, dealing with some internalized misogyny.
Which is, generally speaking, what causes the negative version of this type of behavior, right?
However, With the spread of the phrase, its meaning has become distorted. I don't know if you ever played telephone as a kid, but it's that game where you're in a circle, you whisper something in the ear of the person next to you and it goes around the circle, and then eventually you find out what the phrase has become. I feel like that's what's happened with the phrase pick me. One would argue, one being me.
This one would tend to agree, and I would add that this is just sort of the way of these things, isn't it?
Women and girls are now labeled as pick me, even when they're not making fun of other women at all.
Oh, we're criticizing something about women? That means it's open season. No.
This trend further perpetuates the sexism it so vehemently strives to decry, broadening the terms for women bashing. I understand the tendency to want to hold women to a higher standard because they should know better, but I wonder if thinking that way is stunting feminist progress.
Ding, 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 ding. Absolutely. But what is the mechanism by which this sort of thing happens?
Perhaps we need to remind ourselves that no one is born a feminist.
So, Tara is really onto something here, but the general discourse in this area is still severely lacking.
The pick-me-girl archetype highlights just how deeply embedded the idea of the gender binary still is in our society. No matter how it's interpreted, the pick-me-girl archetype diminishes the personhood of individuals who may possess identities and personalities that are a mixture of the feminine and the masculine, and continues to peg gender expression to biological sex.
Oh, isn't that sweet? Let's take another look at that.
The pick-me-girl archetype highlights just how deeply embedded the idea of the gender binary still is in our society.
No, I would say it illustrates how the gender role hierarchy persists, despite the work of so many. That's a cute trick, implying that the hierarchy is inherent to the binary, that to erase the one, we must erase the other. Also a fun, upside-down way of admitting that you believe women really are inferior. And the only way to eradicate that inferiority is to erase the categories of men and women altogether. Which sounds suspiciously misogynistic.
No matter how it's interpreted, the pick-me-girl archetype diminishes the personhood of individuals.
Acknowledging this organic material boundary admits that we are not the only arbiters of our fates. Yes, your life is not yours alone, and to insist otherwise is to both willfully ignore the obvious and to actively sabotage your own relationships.
Who may possess identities and personalities that are a mixture of the feminine and the masculine.
You mean everyone? But where do these concepts come from? What is their significance based upon? And why are they to be recognized over, say, material facts?
And continues to peg gender expression to biological sex.
As opposed to what? We're not men or women. We're masculine and feminine. Accepts these as the real thing. I don't know who needs to hear this, but deciding you're not a woman won't keep you from getting pregnant. And if you birth that child, you are a mother. Otherwise, you've just deprived a child of its mother, which is the very essence of unethical, not to mention heartbreaking. So you better learn to wear that title. Figure out how it fits on you, because the surest way to be a bad mother to your child is to be no mother at all. So fine, don't have kids. Maybe that sort of accident will never happen to you. Maybe abortion is the more realistic option. But this has become less accessible. Why is abortion access so important? It is a question of who has final say over whether you become a mother or not. And that's why I'm pro-choice. First 3 months, free and clear. Because I think such an important decision should rest with you. Stepping into the generational fray is no small thing, and needs to be fully chosen if you're gonna play your role to the best of your abilities. What this looks like is different for each of us, and surely in this era of inclusiveness, that idea is not so far-fetched. But Mother is not a person. She remains firmly an archetype, difficult to inhabit and embody, impractical and unattainable, because she is an ideal. The perfect mother is an ideal, and ideals are like fixed points on the horizon we orient ourselves towards. They are both real and unreachable, like the edge of the sky. Ideals point us in the direction we want to go. Perfection is unattainable because we are not only ideas, but also human. This is why that pesky sexual dimorphism won't go away. But I reject the notion that hierarchy is inherent to binary. Just because you have two things does not mean one of them has to be the better one. This is baby talk. This is infantile. We can do so much better. The corruption of the pick-me girl by the broader culture, from a tool for unpacking internalized misogyny to a tool for perpetuating it, illustrates the social tilt and how easily our sense of self-gratification comes at the expense of other women when we are not engaged, as most are not, in this kind of analysis. Because modern so-called feminism is perfectly happy to play along with the idea that women don't exist. As if we are so desperate to escape the kitchen, we would stow away in manhood, missing the fact that this is still asking them for protection, for permission. We are not so awful that we need to escape ourselves. Not so chained to the kitchen, we must disguise ourselves to get away. I had to take a leap of faith that things were not so dire. Finding myself in the quintessential feminine role demanded I reevaluate a ton of things. Womanhood is not so bad, come to find out. Most of what we've all been taught is bullshit, of course. It's everything a man's life is, and more. And that's the reason we are suppressed. No man will ever be a mother. Create an entire separate person with their body. Someone who had not existed before? You can't tell me that's not a big fucking deal. So go on, boys. Be standing up. Don't you feel so superior? But this effort is not ours to make alone either. It is harder for us to deny we need their help. And they have decided that this means they are better than us. As if every man does not have a mother. They've convinced us of this, using everything they could find, till it's infested every aspect of our lives, making its way into our own worldview, into our actions, so that we become an agent of it. So that to turn our backs on it feels like turning on ourselves. But if something makes us feel inferior, we need to question it. And this does mean questioning ourselves, interrogating what we believe and why, to sift out the elements of patriarchal thinking which make women as a group self-destructive. This is long and often painful and even alienating. And I think one of feminism's most important projects should be creating a structure, a cultural space for women to undergo this process, individually and collectively. That we find ourselves instead on the precipice of legal annihilation in the West demonstrates the failure of feminism to actually serve the needs of women. But it's not because we don't exist, and it's not because we want for nothing, though you will hear both, often from the same person. I don't blame many women for turning away from something that asks for so much and can offer them so little. I was one of them. I didn't need feminism because I wasn't a woman at all. This life fell apart for me a long time ago because I prioritized raising my kid over maintaining it. The trans movement has roused me from my overworked, middle-aged days to report back on what life has taught me. Gender is what you make it, but nature is a stubborn, sneaky bitch who will have her say so long as we remain human. So this has been my first attempt at unpacking a little bit of kitchen baggage directly for you guys, and trying to wade into these very murky waters just a little bit. Thank you so much for joining me this evening out here in the garden. I have been Rad Mom. Come back at the top of the hour for the live stream where we will wade into these choppy seas a little deeper. And back here next Wednesday for another video. And if you made it this far, please do subscribe to the channel so we can all work together to bring feminism back into the real world because, as you can see, we desperately need it. I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks. Bye.